morning, everybody. It's a great turnout, and thank you for inviting me this morning. So it's my privilege to be moderating the next panel, and in a pre-meeting teleconference with a few of the speakers, they all told me they were going to be controversial. So I'm really looking forward to this session, and perhaps I can even stir the pot a little bit so that we can have a really good discussion afterwards. But first of all, it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. I'm not going to read through the bio, and that is Dr. Jean-François Deleuze. And then I will ask the other speakers just to come forward after one another, and then I'll come in at the end and we'll moderate the panel discussion. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jean-François.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so first of all, I would like to go to normal, a lot of echo. So I would like to I'm sorry for my very, very bad Franglish accent that you will discover as long as the talk will advance and the speed with which I'm talking. I tried to correct it for years, but I cannot. So it's a mix between English and French, but I guess I hope you will get the key messages. So to start with, I would like to thank Pascal and Catalina for this very nice invitation, and it's an opportunity to tell you what France wants to do in personalized genomic medicine, which you will see is a little bit barely different than what the others are doing, but you know this is a French exception, as usual. And it's also it's to tell you a little bit what we do, but it's also to learn, because if there is a space in which we have to work together, it's really around personalized medicine. So my talk will be focused on genomics, not saying that personalized medicine is just only genomics, but I'm just, focusing on what I know, which is I'm a geneticist by training. I'm a scientist by training, so I was a little bit very interested by this session this morning, but I am very, very far from everything which is regulatory, paying agency, and so on. So please be nice with me about all these questions. So I'll start with an observation, which is that I guess we will all recognize that we are seeing the limit of a system. I guess when you are diseased, and to be a little bit basic, either you get a drug or you don't get access to a drug. People that don't have access to a drug are well known to essentially are people in the rare disease, drug or treatment, more generally. The people from the rare disease field, only a very few of them have access to treatment. But there are plenty of other diseases that in the WHO report of 2030, even for some common disease, there are probably between 30 and 40 diseases that are called unmet medical needs, for which there is absolutely nothing to, not even cure, but even also alleviating some symptoms. There are diseases from Africa that we can understand why, there is not so much incentive to try to work on this disease, but even in our country, disease like osteoarthritis, for example, you have nothing. So, but when you are lucky enough to be part of the people that have access to a drug, still, even the big blockbusters, the classical ACE inhibitor or statin and so on, barely work in probably less than 50% of the patients who are taking these drugs. Or even sometimes it's below 50%, sometimes it's 40%. And when you are lucky enough, quote unquote, to have a drug, if it works, you can also experience a very nasty adverse effect, which is today, I guess, it's probably coming from a JAMA paper in 5 years from now. It looks to be the 5th or 6th cause of death in the US. So, as you can imagine, and this is for two different reasons. Here, you don't have access to drug because when you find a gene in a rare disease, a gene is not a target. There is a long way. You can say, oh, why don't we have genes or drugs when we know the target for ages? If you look at cystic fibrosis, the gene is known since the 90s, and still we don't have any therapy against cystic fibrosis. So, a gene is not a target. And there is also some political and economical incentive, or not incentive, not to go into this direction. Here, it's more because the pharma industry is already still today, even if they are claiming they are doing less, following the one drug fits all, the drug for everyone, the same drug for everyone, and they are trying to develop a kind of average patient, And at the end of the day, you know, with all what we know today about the genetic variabilities, that doesn't work anymore. This target, not of all of these targets, but some of them are polymorphic into the population. And here also, you know, these toxicity issues are often linked to drug metabolic enzymes that are highly polymorphic into the population. So if you don't take into consideration the genetic makeup of the individual, this is what you will end up with. So these are, you know, the clinical incentives to go into personalized medicine. There are others, but I guess, you know, we are not going to engage into personalized medicine just because there are sequencing facilities today, because we need it, because, you know, we are facing a clinical limitations that are not acceptable. So what is behind, you know, most of these differences is the genetic variability. I don't know how much of you are geneticists or have been trained in genetics, probably a lot. But, you know, 2 by 2, looking at the human genomes, we are different by at least at 1 million positions, and which are, you know, these nucleotides that you have along our genome. So 1 million difference between 2 people in this room, and collectively at the population's level, more than 200 million of polymorphism has been evidenced at the population level. There are common polymorphism and rare polymorphism. And it is extrapolated that when 1 million people will be sequenced, we will probably be looking at 2 billion positions at the human genome that will be polymorphic. So the whole genome is going to be different anyway, probably at each and every position. So variability is a rule, is no more the exception. So we need absolutely to get variability into the equation. And this is even more complex than only, you know, the germline DNA. If you have a cancer, you have 2 genomes. You have the normal genome, which is a spectral karyotyping, but you have also the cancer genome, which is adding to the complexity. And here you can have, you know, passenger mutation, or you can have driver mutation that are really, you know, pushing the growth of the tumors. And there is even more complexity that we learned since probably a few years that, you know, and which is philosophically important for us, that we are not only composed of eukaryotic cells. We are full of bacteria and microorganisms. So a man is something with eukaryotic cell and bacteria, and you cannot dissolve that. So we are a kind of symbiotic stuff, you know, and if you don't look at the complexity as a whole, you will really miss a lot of information at the medical and genetic level. So, you know, and this is a bit provocative, but we will be at the gene level numbers, we are only 10%, not human, but eukaryotic. So we need to take this variability into consideration, and the good news is that, you know, we have tools to do that today. So either we look at some pieces of the human genome, which is called genotyping, or we sequence everything. And I will give you some example about, you know, what has been achieved with both of these technology in terms of personalized medicine. This, you probably know that. You know, it has been a big problem that the pharma company Bayer experienced, you know, 20 years ago. They were very close to bankrupt because of a statin inhibitor, which is what's called, at least in France, it was Becol, probably in different names in the US and elsewhere. But you give Becol to patients just to decrease the cholesterol level, and at the end of the day, you kill hundreds of people of muscle adverse effect. Very, very nasty muscle adverse effect. It was called rhabdomyolysis, which is not expected at all. And nobody was really able to explain why, but through genotyping, a few years after, it was in 2005, it was a genotyping expedition. So you look at 1 million positions all over the genome, and for each of these positions, you look at, in patient taking the statin and patient with adverse effect and not, are they different or not? And you end up having a signal here, which tells that there is something here in the human genome that is, you know, probably linked to the fact to have the adverse effect. And you look on the left, on the right, in the middle of this position of the human genome, and guess what? You know, there is a gene, which is a very simple one, which is OATP-AB1, which is a transporter, the liver transporter of the statin. And depending about the form you have, if you have CC, or CT or TT, you have at risk, at very high risk to have rhabdomyolysis or not. So this is an example where you identify, you know, a genotype that will absolutely exclude a patient of taking this drug, and you will give him another drug for the same indication. So this was already 10 years ago. It's a demonstration that you can use high throughput pangenomic analysis to try to stratify patients before, you know, you decide to give them a drug. Now there is today also the same with sequencing, and I guess we discussed a lot yesterday with Catalina about, you know, what is research and what is clinical implementation. I'm not going to talk about research because the research demonstration is made that we can use this technology, you know, to stratify patients. The goal of personalized medicine is to do it in the clinical setting. And so in oncology, everyone will recognize that when you hit a target, when you hit a driver, you will slow down or even, you know, stop the growth of the tumors. There are plenty of papers about R13 and so on, but there are only a few clinical trials that make the demonstration of the benefit in a large-scale study about stratification by genetics or genomics versus no stratification. This is a fairly recent paper, which is coming from a French team in Gustave Roussy, for the ones that are in the field of oncology. It was called Moscato. And you know, these guys were looking only at 70 genes, or 40 genes, I don't remember. And you know, depending about the fact that they identify or not into the patient an actionable mutation, they will decide to give a given drug. And the outcome, the primary outcome, was progression-free survival after stratification compared to the ones that the patient get for the first, you know, treatment he had. And they wanted to have more than 20% increase. And they were able to achieve in this part of the population, blue is PFS2, red is PFS1, and the ratio of both should have been more than 1.3 in 20%, and there is 33%. What is important into this study is that it is in a clinical setting, it is in a regulatory setting, it is in a control setting, it is not a research expedition. And from there, you know, you might be able to get something from the regulatory agencies to try to push this type of screening into, you know, into the clinic and into a potential reimbursement. Already 10 minutes. Okay. So you probably heard about immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is a big, you know, big drug today in cancer. And again, you know, you can stratify here in melanoma the responding patient with regard to the number of mutations they have into the tumors. Just because the more mutation you have, the more likely you have to produce an epitope that, in the context of an inhibitor of a checkpoint, will lead to a response. But also, people discover that intestinal microbiota can also be a marker a biomarker to predict if the patient will respond or not. If you look at these two graphs, what is here is the shrinkage of the tumors in animal models. So on the right, you have no shrinkage after treatment. On the left, you have shrinkage. The tumor is decreasing when you get the product. And what is different, this mouse has no microbiota. It's an exilic mouse. This mouse has a microbiota. So what you get into your intestine also, and they were able to deconvolute all the microbiota to two bacteria. These two bacteria were, when they were there, quantitatively, you could explain if a patient will respond or not. So in rare disease also it works. It took 20 years to find CFTR. And if you look now with exome sequencing, in 2.5 years, people were able to find 400 genes for 400 different families, when it took 20 years to find one. And today, we can even, in some very specific case where you have babies which are 6 to 6.5 months born, you can do whole genome sequencing in 26 hours. So it's really moving on the whole field, but all of that are incentive to say, okay, at the scientific level that works. So we have needs, we have scientific basis, and I guess it's used today a little bit. And here you have, the increase of diagnostic rate of intellectual disability. When you use exome sequencing, you go from something like 30% to 40 or 50%. You have all the, in the field of oncology, all the drugs today that are given, taking into account your genetic makeup into your tumors. And you have what you call probably here pharmacogenomics, which to me I don't exactly know what you mean by that between pharmacogenomics, pharmacogenetic, and so on. But to me that are the genes that are involved in the drug processing somewhere. So what's new? Because it's already there. Why are we talking about personalized medicine today if we believe that it was basically mostly here and it was only lacking clinical implementation? What is new is that thanks to Illumina, not to talk about them, we reach a stage, a technology which is at a cost which is today affordable to go into the clinic. The quality, the cost, the miniaturization make it absolutely usable into the clinics. It was not a big breakthrough in terms of sequencing. It was more a kind of marketing strategy to put, when you buy these 10 machines, you get the reagent at a cost that enable you to do the whole genome at $1,000. It was not, a huge breakthrough technologically speaking. And then, and because of all of that, technology, needs, and so on, people were very excited. And even today, 1,000 is already behind us. And this will be the only ethical or political slide I have. Is if you go today on the website, you can find a genome at $600 by BGI, which is already cutting the price by 40%. Or in 6 months from now, if you were surfing to Amazon, you could sequence yourself for less than 350 euro. Not kidding, it's real, but it has only worked for 3 months, so 3 to 6 months. Today the price is going up to $600, and probably that a singer in the US is offering the sequencing to the people, so it's not even going to cost anything. It's going to cost Blessinger and favor Illumina business, but it's not going to cost anything. So just a personal, comment, which is, that I found in Twitter. When you don't buy a technology project, be careful the product. And it looked to be good, to be sequenced freely, but think about, what people will do with your sequences, I guess. And here we have a big thinking to do in terms of what these people will do with all this information. It might look good for our health, but there will be plenty of drawbacks with this type of probability system. So what we did in France, so this row is to say it was top-down. Because if you let scientists speaking together, it took 10 years without taking a single decision. Everyone was sure that he gets the best use how to do it. So we went to the government, like in the UK, and the first minister knocked on the table, you are going to do it. If not, we will still be discussing about, what are we going to do. So it was really a political decision that helped us moving by Manuel Valls at this time, our first minister. And the idea was really, it's not a research at all expedition, it's a clinical plan. We want to have sequences into the clinic and to build a national and industrial sector. It's not at all to make research. It's not a program to make target discovery. It's a program to democratize sequencing and to put it into the clinic. It's absolutely different. The concept is very, very important. 5 minutes. I'm blind to timekeeping. I cannot see. Okay, I see 15 minutes? Okay. 15 minutes. So this is the plan. So the plan at a glance in a nutshell. So by the way, we will have, and it's very different from Genomic England, we will have 12 diagnostic platforms. And I guess it might be crazy, because you say economically it doesn't make a lot of sense, but if we want to get the adoption about all the professionals all over France, we need to try to put, machine in all the big hospitals where we need, to have the commitment of all these people. If you do a central position in France, people from the north will fight people from the south to get access to the facility. So this is a challenge, but really the goal why we do it was to get adoption from everyone. And so we have something which is original and that we are discussing with Genomic England. We call the CREFIC. CREFIC is the Center for Development. What we do today in personalized medicine is not what we will do tomorrow. We are talking about long fragment sequencing, metabonomic, and so on. Today, it's a very, very early beginning of the sequencing we will need. It's not at all the end of the game. We know that, even if Illumina is perfectly well technology, we are far from what we will need in 2 or 3 years from now, and we are not answering most of the questions we're asking. So there is plenty of room for technology development. We also need to have, we talked about, biobanking and so on, and we need a lot of standardization. So we don't have tools today, but we build this center to set up standard and reference to make sure that everyone is going to work in the same way. And we will have this big center for collecting and analyzing data, where all the genomic data plus the clinical data will be sitting. So this will be national, but this will be a lot virtual, and everywhere in the country will have access to it. The big difficulty we will have here, and it's a discussion we had yesterday, is that the big difficulty is to get access to, is to put the hand of the clinical data. It's very, very difficult to take the clinical data from a physician. Maybe we have to take it from the patient himself. But the clinicians are sitting on their data because this is a kind of a treasure for them to make career, to publish and everything. So this is the bad side of the project, but this is a big hurdle that we have to control. So this is the French plan in one slide, and we have launched 2 first platforms, one in Lyon, middle of France, and one in Paris at PHP. The goal, the 12 in terms of capacity, 12 platforms, because we say, okay, we have 300,000 new cancer per year, plus 50,000 escape, plus 60,000 rare disease on a yearly basis we want to look at. So when you add all together, you end up with 200-something thousand equivalent genome per year. To be able to face this number, you need this capacity. But this capacity is an initial capacity, because if you think about in terms of complex disease or common disease, we will need more than that. But the bet we are making is that the technology will evolve, and what will be there in 2 or 3 years from now is very different from what we have today. And we will build from this infrastructure to enable, the capacity to do common disease. So, to do that, you know that there are plenty of hurdles all along the road, and we launched 4 pilot projects. Like in probably most of the clinical personalized medicine plan, oncology, because this is where we get data, rare disease. But we need 2 things that are more not original but different. We are not in infectious disease. That might be a mistake, but we select 4. But the government asks us, what are you going to do in common disease? Because the big health economy, the big economy we should do is in common disease. And here, we should absolutely try to find some ways of leveraging personalized medicine in common disease. And nobody knows exactly how to do it. So we pick a type 2 diabetes, just to learn. It's more a learning expedition. We are not saying that we will use genetics to help patients with diabetes easily, but we will learn with them. And we have a general population. And this is something which is quite original to what we do, but mostly what we are going to do is compare sequence from a diseased person to sequence from a control person. But if you don't compare the right sequences, you will end up with plenty of information that you will not be able to use. So if you look at that, these are French people. You see we are different. So it's a principal component analysis. We are quite different from Spanish people, from Italian, from other EU. We are there. But even, within France, and this is a collection of 600 people from this different country, and when you overlay this PCA with regard to the country, you absolutely fit the geography of France. It's very serious, and it was already known for Europe. And you do that for Europe, you have exactly the same. It's already the reflect of the settlement of the population in the country. But when you do that, when you use to compare with your patient, the same sample coming from the same country where they are, you end up filtering 50% more variants. If you use the 1,000, there is no French people in the 1,000 genome. If I do an experiment, I will end up with potentially 4,000 candidates. If I just add my 600 French people, I will only end up with 2,000 candidates, because the other one will be already into the system. So we were talking yesterday, I'm just talking about French people. I'm even not talking about endogenous or aboriginal people, but just guess, if you want to compare an Inuit or an Aboriginal people with a sequence reticle from Australia or Canada, you will be absolutely nowhere. So you absolutely need to have sequences of your control population. So we are not alone. So we talked about UK. So the paper says 5 minutes. We talked about UK, but there are plenty of the program, and there is a kind of race to say, okay, who is going to be the bigger? 100,000, million, 10 million, I don't know what is the right numbers, but I guess the way we took is to fit with need in oncology and rare disease field. We didn't want to put the numbers, but we wanted to match it with a real need. I will switch then, and I will just finish with that. So already, scientists are complaining because we are not yet at the first stage of trying to put clinical into the medicine, that they say, okay, we should do multi-omics. But the only message, and you have to resist to that, the only message of this slide is we need to start from the beginning. It's true that we will need to make transcriptomic, metabonomic in the future. That's absolutely obvious. But if you want to do something, start with the beginning. And the beginning is there. It's really there. So this is the last slide. So the perspective is the future will be bright. So we will be able to train thousands and thousands of scientists, but we'll be busy. Because again, we are at the very, very beginning. We are totally missing the structural analysis of the human genome. So plenty of genes are simply not usable because of some very technical problem. We should have access to the chromatin, to the epigenetic status of the genome, and plenty of rare disease today. We get today mutations that are in regulatory regions that modify, in fact, the chromatin status. They are not, just, cutting a protein. And we need absolutely tools for integration. So I guess, and this is what our last vision. And again, some years ago, people told you, okay, you will be sequenced at birth and that's it. This is totally wrong. Probably what is the reality is that, we will be multiply sequenced all over our life, because all this technology will be accessible and cheap. And I guess, the physician in the future will ask for a methyllome, a transcriptome, or a given specific analysis that will be, in fact, I hope we enable us, to go back into this virtuous chain to alleviate to potential prevention. Thank you.
on? It's working great. So my name is Lise Matzke, and I'm from the ABC Office of Biobank Education and Research, and I'm cross-appointed and sit at the BC Cancer Agency in Victoria, BC. So it's, I thank you for the invitation to come to speak today about biobanking and to highlight some of the issues that we're facing, but also highlight some of the resources that we've developed locally that are now getting global traction in their uptake. So it may surprise you to know that about almost 50% of cancer research requires at least one biospecimen. So biospecimens are a very important input. And the activity of collecting and storing and using biospecimens, or what we call biobanking, has really grown up as a cottage industry over the years, and it's brought some prominent issues with it. But really, the inability to address these issues really would impact genomic and all omic research directly. And if we can't access specimens for good quality research, then the enterprise is really in peril. Two important trends in biospecimen research pertain to issues of capacity or demand and complexity. And so if you look at these graphs here, they're from 3 research laboratories over the same period of time. And the graph on the left really notes that over time there's been an increase in the need for more biospecimens to be utilized in research. And in that same time frame, in those 3 labs, there's been a need for increased complexity of biospecimens. And what I mean by that is longer gone are the days of grabbing maybe an FFPE block or a frozen sample, and now we're really needing more complex sets, so maybe some matched FFPEs and matched to frozen or blood samples, and complex outcomes data. And that's a trend that we expect to see only grow in the near future. So the process from obtaining a patient sample to the lab is what we call biobanking. And it's much more complex than I think anybody realizes. It's not just a sum of operational parts that exist, but it exists in a complex and dynamic domain of healthcare society and research. And so the major issues that biobanking faces are issues of access, being able to find and acquire biospecimens to do the kind of research that you want, or being able to have them shared with you. Efficiencies in operations, issues of biospecimen and data quality, and you can imagine that becomes more complex when you're wanting biospecimens from different locations. This, of course, then impacts scientific reproducibility, and if it all goes wrong, the loss of public confidence. So many years ago, the Canadian Cancer Research Alliance of funders recognized some of these issues, and at that time they were developing a pan-Canadian strategy for cancer. And the CCRA turned to the Canadian Tissue Repository Network not to collect more biospecimens, but to try to address these issues. And together, CEDARNet was tasked with creating national standards for biospecimen research, to create tools and resources to support adoption of these standards, to create a mechanism to disseminate this, and ultimately to raise the quality of biospecimen research. And this resulted in the CEDARNet Biobank Certification Program, which launched in 2011. This program is backed by standard operating procedures and our required operational practices that are available at the Biobank Resource Center. Certification is applicable to anybody using biospecimens. It could be one biospecimen, it could be many, it could be cancer, it could be non-cancer research. So it has wide utilization. The Biobank Certification Program focuses on promoting common standards, facilitating harmonized biospecimen practices. It offers online education to anybody involved in any part of the life cycle of biospecimen research, and ultimately fosters public confidence. There's also a biobank register, so it increases the visibility of biobanks with biospecimens to researchers out in the community. So once we had standards to promote biospecimen quality through this biobank certification program and a mechanism to disseminate knowledge, we focused on access and quality with regards to biobanking. We've tailored the biobank certification program to address research needs here locally. And in working with the Health Research Council of BC, we've created a BC-focused program that creates a BC Biobank Register. So researchers can more easily access and find research biospecimens. And this has been developed and disseminated with the major research entities here in British Columbia and was launched in September 2017. We've launched an online education program aimed at how-to for biospecimen research, and this course has now been launched, and it's entitled Biospecimen Research Methods, and it exists on the edX platform, and to date has had nearly 150 learners participate worldwide. We've exported the concept of biobank certification to New South Wales Health Pathology, and there we worked collaboratively with this pathology group, this health pathology group, and their biobanking community to really address two key issues: how to better interface with research and pathology departments, and how to create a process to certify their biobanks in New South Wales, Australia. From this work, was really emphasized that an important aspect of accessing biospecimens is the interface of clinical departments of pathology and research. And so many large pathology departments support basic translational and clinical research on a daily basis. Pathology is the source of clinical material, including FFPE blocks, that with the appropriate and ethical and privacy mechanisms can be utilized for health research. And so we've created a research access initiative that would provide departments with a framework to better facilitate research. And that sort of led us to think about, are there other better ways to distribute materials like blocks and slides? Brainstorming that we're doing with BC's Agency for Pathology and Laboratory Medicine. So, with that, and making the 7-minute mark, I'd like to conclude and just note that from the perspective of biobanking and biospecimen research, that we're working hard on solutions that provide value and increase the quality of all omic research. And our focus on stakeholder collaboration has really helped us with the uptake of these initiatives in different jurisdictions, and so we're very excited. Finally, I'd like to just thank our funders and partners and our team that tirelessly thinks about how to improve the system. So thank you.
Right. Thanks very much to Kathleen and the team at Genome BC for the invitation to speak here. Just to be absolutely clear, I'm not an expert on genetics at all, unlike the rest of the panel, or on biobank or others. I'm really a pedestrian cardiologist with an interest in data, having been the co-founder of PHEMI. So that said, I guess the audience will indulge me talking a little bit about my journey, which explains how I got here, and as well speaking a bit about PHEMI itself. My journey started, for the purposes of this conversation, at St. Paul's Hospital, when I had done my advanced training in interventional cardiology, and then ended up taking over as the head of the coronary care units at St. Paul's, which was a complex unit which we built out around a time that was very exciting in cardiology because things like TAVI, or transcatheter aortic valve, procedures were being pioneered at St. Paul's, and this is an example of a procedure actually invented at St. Paul's Hospital called the transapical aortic valve procedure. But in my role in this coronary care unit, dealing with 6 people in the province flying in from various parts of the province, it became obvious to me that a centralized system dealing with people at the end of their trajectory, or sick people that is, within a centralized hospital, without any attention to systems thinking, was not really the way of the future. And so I and colleagues around me essentially began a think tank called PHEMI, which was an acronym for Personalized Health management initiative. And we imagined a world where care would be provided at the level of the patients, driven by the patient, him or herself, in partnership with the system itself. And this is at a time, of course, when people like Lee Hood were inventing the terms P for medicine, which spoke in so many ways to the kind of solution that we were looking to emulate. As well, it seemed to me that other than focusing on just personalized aspects of health related to individuals itself, we should be thinking much more broadly than just the individual. And I think that's completely jives with your comments, Kathleen, earlier on today about the global enterprise and about the importance of social determinants of health. And of course, the basic code for all of this at some level is genomics. And so the biology is, I think, quite reasonable to say, at a point where the Silicon Revolution was in the 1970s, except it's evolving more rapidly. And through genomics, we can decode the basic recipe of life in all organisms on Earth. And through big data and AI, we can learn at large scale the role of this decoded information in determining human health and disease, and even understanding human behavior. So in so many ways, biology has become a big data science. And so a little bit about PHEMI itself. We had done a couple of pilot projects and point solutions before we teamed up with Paul Terry and Co. And Paul and his group, of course, had a very distinguished career in supercomputing. And so we combined forces around the potential of the future of healthcare in British Columbia and more globally. And just to take you through the slide, which is a bit of a complex slide, but the key part is the Hadoop system at the center of the slide. Hadoop is the schemaless database that underpins systems like Google and Yahoo. And so with Hadoop and with the other pieces built around Hadoop, which essentially constitutes the machine within the PHEMI central supercomputer database, we can import data from any sources, be it EMRs, or images, or devices, or Internet of Things, in any format into the system, applying metadata at the point of ingest, which will ultimately define appropriate usage. So the metadata then decorates the data ingested with things like retention policies, consent management, rights of access, etc., provenance persistence. And then at the back end of the system, before release, there is a policy-based access control mechanism that kicks in to ensure the data is released only to appropriate users. And those users might be traditional business intelligence users, or statisticians, or data scientists, which of course is coming up very quickly in the world of both health and otherwise, or to other business kind of processes. We have focused on storing everything, computing everything, and incorporating privacy by design with flexible integration. Many in the audience will remember that it was Anne Kamukian, the ex-privacy commissioner in Ontario, who actually took Facebook to task in 2010. Of course, that's catching up many years later with the recent developments around Facebook. Tomorrow, May 25th, GDPR, General Data Policy Regulation, goes live in Europe, which creates a huge onus on enterprises of all nature, of all types, to deal with data in a responsible way. And so we focused on this privacy construct, working closely with the privacy commissioners. And what we've been able to develop is a system where through the access-based, the policy-based access controls, we can actually provide data into zones of trust. And so we followed very closely the HIPAA guidelines on this, and it's not just the initial 2 phases of HIPAA, which is HIPAA Safe Harbor, but it's also the more advanced HIPAA expert determination guidelines, which allow for data to be mapped into zones of trust, mapping the sensitivity of the data, the trust of the users, and the security controls around the environment in which the data is going to be released. And so what we are able to do then is collaborate with organizations to define or to implement their own privacy regulations, and as well to enforce or supplement data sharing agreements between organizations, or for that matter, between jurisdictions. And so I see I have 1 minute left, and in that 1 minute, this, I think, should be a topic for a debate at the level of the panel, because talk is cheap. The question is, how do we move forward in British Columbia? And just a couple of thoughts. We have the supercluster initiative, which includes things like the use of balls reflected here on a rendering. It's not going to look exactly like this if it gets approved within the next month, but it'll look something similar. We have UBC as a partner in the supercluster initiative, and this is a rendering of the new gun pavilion for sports exercise medicine and exercise science, which is just a couple of doors down, and which would be a very suitable vehicle for implementation of genomically focused scientific wellness or medicine more broadly. And then lastly, and this has already been alluded to, I myself, with PHEMI and also in my personal capacity, am very active in Africa. There's lots of value in working in under-resourced areas other than just under-resourced areas in British Columbia, which will both inform how we go about servicing the under-resourced areas and populations in British Columbia, but also allowing ourselves to leapfrog and imagine the art of the possible by leveraging the momentum that exists in parts of the world other than North America, which are very actively involved in exactly the same endeavors that we ought to be pursuing. Thanks very much.
Hi, so I'm David Huntsman, and I'm going to be sort of trying to raise some issues around capacity and implementation, and really kind of it's a variety of challenges. Some conflicts of interest. I'm not going to specifically mention contextual genomics products. I'm working with the provincial lab agency, but my opinions do not reflect those of the agencies. And but also, I thought everyone would be sort of half asleep at this time or running out the door to get lunch. So I was intentionally provocative in the next slides, to the point of perhaps being offensive. But I realized the talk was so great, everybody's wide awake, and that wasn't needed. So if I caused dyspepsia, I apologize. So capacity issue number one. I don't think we should delude ourselves. Most genomic tools are not worth transferring. Biomarkers are great vehicles, great things to publish papers about. Very, very, very few of them, very few from BC, very few from anywhere will ever be used clinically. And this includes assays which have gone considerably down the roadmap, like the Institute of Medicine Biomarker Roadmap, and are actually technically and analytically valid. For instance, here's a classifier for high-grade serous cancer of the ovary described in Australia, rediscovered in America, which is technically analytically valid, a little bit prognostic. It's been the source of many wonderful publications, but it's kind of like it's an Olympic silver medalist. It's never, only the gold medalists get used. And it's has no clinical purpose right now, so it's not really a biomarker. And so given the potential to change care is so remote for early biomarker research, I believe that building in transfer plans before secondary validation is much more likely to contribute to the delusion that biomarkers are useful rather than helping patients. So I think we have to be careful with how much we put the cart before the horse. In terms of transfer, things are really, really good and simple and easy to understand. Transfer just happens. We don't need a bunch of transfer professionals. I'll give an example. In ovarian cancer, through pathology and genomic research, we realized they don't really come from the ovary. Most come from the fallopian tube. This led our head of Gynonc to suggest that, hey, let's remove fallopian tubes. Whenever a surgery is done, take out those fallopian tubes. If a woman's having a tubal ligation, take out those fallopian tubes. We proved this was safe, and it's kind of gone global and viral. In BC, when we started, only 8% of the time when hysterectomies were done without oophorectomy, fallopian tubes came out. A few years ago, we're up to 80%. And this has sort of taken off in jurisdictions around the world, Australia, United States, Europe. And it was just by saying, hey, this is a good idea, because physicians and healthcare professionals, they want to make a difference. It also doesn't cost anything as well, which helps. And so when we really struggle with something simple, and supposedly it's going to make people's lives better, but it's not getting traction. Perhaps it's time for a reflection. Maybe it isn't that good. And, but of course, with more complex things, like the introduction of germline WGS for constitutional genomics, there's broad clinical and logistical impacts. And there you really do need multifaceted stakeholder engagement, whatever you're going to do. Another capacity issue is how to be scalable and the need for corporate partners. Now, I'm a pathologist and I think very much about the lab sort of side of things. Local implementation, in BC anyway, stops at the provincial boundary and is likely kind of uninteresting from a business perspective because it's too small and historically the decision-making was too parochial to be kind of useful. And whereas corporations need to plan for global scalability. A couple of markers I know of, Prosigna in particular, were developed and validated in BC and they're used internationally. BC was a very late adopter of Prosigna. It didn't actually prevent it from becoming a great international assay. And it's kind of sad for people who develop things not to have them used in BC because you want to help the people around you. It's not really germane to business opportunities based on the way we operate. But I see some hope here because we have to adopt things quickly if it's going to make a difference. And yet you don't want to adopt things which aren't going to be good. They have to make sense for patients and the system. But I think the test review committee, which has been established at the lab agency, once fully empowered, will be a nimble way for made in BC assays to get looked at and, if possible, adopted, because that can help in international adoption later. This is a real issue. I think it's a paradox. We're global leaders in genomic research. For the size of our population, maybe we're the best in the world at this. But I think we're really poor at genomic healthcare, particularly the diagnostic side. We are way behind. We are worse from provinces, which we shouldn't be worse at those provinces than anything, and we're worse at this. And I think a possible explanation is that funds have gone into research, which is fantastic, and through GELS funding to better understanding patients, but the clinical delivery systems are under-resourced. And it's a bit like, you know, if you had a transit system and we built the bus depots, we've designed the routes, we understand the customers, but we forgot to buy the buses and hire drivers. And that's where we're at. And if you want coal, you have to do stuff at the coal face. And I think we have to now think about investing in terms of the biomarker side of genomic medicine into the kind of laboratories which are going to be doing the testing and the programs which they're going to operate with, if we're going to make a difference. Because the way we've been approaching this up to now isn't really working. And this sort of gap in performance, which is actually massive and kind of embarrassing, is actually what drew me to work with the lab agency, because I believe that the best room to be operating in is the room for improvement. And there's such a great room for improvement and potential in BC to do a better job. And you know, I think maybe the dialogues which are going to happen throughout today and afterwards may help us get there. So thanks, and I think we're a short discussion away from lunch.